Trump leaves his Cadillac one to comfort a crying child, shocking the world with his unexpected actions. What would you do if something you cherished, something meaningful to you, made you a target for others? Would you stand firm and hold on to it, or would you let go to fit in? The playground was a sea of movement and noise. Children ran across the field, their laughter and shouts mingling with the rhythmic creak of the swings and the hollow clunk of a bouncing basketball. The late afternoon sun bathed everything in warm light, but for Joey, it was the gloomiest day he could remember. Joey, a slight boy of 10 with a mop of sandy brown hair and a round, freckled face, stood near the jungle gym clutching the brim of his bright red cap. The words, "Make America Great Again," were stitched in bold, white letters across the front. To Joey, it wasn't just a hat, it was a gift from his grandfather, a veteran who'd always encouraged him to believe in himself and his country. "Don't ever be afraid to stand tall for what you believe in, Joey," his grandpa had told him when he gave him the hat. Joey took those words to heart. But today, the hat seemed to attract all the wrong attention. "Hey, Joey!" A sharp voice cut through the din. It was Brian, a stocky boy with a loud laugh who always seemed to find joy in other people's discomfort. "What's with the hat? You think you're some kind of big shot now?" Joey's cheeks flushed as he glanced at Brian and the small group of kids gathering around him. "No," he said quietly, gripping the cap tighter. "It was my grandpa's." Brian smirked, stepping closer. "Well, your grandpa must be as clueless as you are if he gave you that thing." The other kids laughed, their jeers growing louder. "Yeah, Joey. Who wears that stupid hat anyway?" Joey's heart pounded as he tried to defend himself. "It's not stupid. It's important to me." "Important?" Brian sneered, grabbing the brim of the hat and tugging it off Joey's head. "What's so important about this dumb thing? Give it back." Joey cried, his voice cracking. The other kids laughed harder, passing the hat around like a trophy. Joey's hands shook as tears welled up in his eyes. He lunged for it, but they were faster, tossing the hat out of his reach again and again. "Stop it!" Joey shouted, his voice breaking as tears streamed down his cheeks. "Please, just stop." The playground was chaos, but beyond the school gates, a convoy of sleek black SUVs rolled down the street. Inside the lead vehicle, Donald Trump sat reviewing documents for an upcoming event. He wore his signature dark suit and red tie, his brow furrowed in concentration. As the convoy passed the school, Trump's eyes drifted out the window. What he saw made him sit up straighter. A small boy, crying and reaching for something, surrounded by a jeering group of kids. "Stop the car," Trump said abruptly, his voice commanding. The driver hesitated. "Sir. You heard me. Stop the car." The convoy came to a halt, and Trump stepped out, his polished shoes crunching against the gravel path leading to the playground. His tall frame and confident stride immediately drew attention. The laughter and shouting faded as the children turned to see who had interrupted their game. "Is that Donald Trump?" one of the kids whispered. "No way," another replied, wide-eyed. Trump walked directly toward the group, his expression serious but calm. The wind tousled his hair slightly as he stopped a few feet away, his presence commanding everyone's attention. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice firm but not loud. The children froze. Even Brian, usually so quick with a retort, seemed at a loss for words. Joey, still sniffling, wiped his face with his sleeve and stared at Trump in shock. Trump's gaze softened as he turned to Joey. "Are you all right, young man?" Joey hesitated, then shook his head. "They took my hat," he said, his voice trembling. "It was my grandpa's. It means a lot to me." Trump's eyes narrowed as he looked at the group of kids, his tone firm but measured. "Is that true? You took this boy's hat and made him cry?" Brian shuffled his feet awkwardly. "We were just messing around." "Messing around?" Trump repeated, his voice rising slightly. Let me tell you something, kids. There's a fine line between having fun and hurting someone. And when you cross that line, it's not just messing around anymore, it's bullying. The group of kids looked at the ground, their earlier bravado fading. Trump crouched down to Joey's level, his blue eyes meeting the boy's tearful gaze. Tell me, Joey. Why is this hat so important to you? Joey sniffled and clutched the brim of the hat that had finally been returned to him. My grandpa gave it to me. He said it stands for believing in yourself and loving your country. A small smile touched Trump's lips. Your grandpa sounds like a wise man. And you know what? It takes a lot of courage to wear something that means so much to you, even when others don't understand it. Joey blinked, his tears slowing. You really think so? Trump nodded. Absolutely. Courage isn't about being the biggest or the loudest, it's about standing up for what matters to you, even when it's hard. What would you have done if you were Joey? Would you have held on to the hat, knowing it could make you a target, or would you have left it at home to avoid trouble? As Trump stood, the group of children remained silent, their earlier energy replaced with something else, guilt, perhaps, or the beginnings of understanding. But the lesson was far from over, and the next moments would leave a lasting impact on everyone who witnessed them. The playground, now silent, was filled with the watchful eyes of children and teachers peering through nearby windows. No one had expected this moment, least of all Joey, who clutched his red hat tightly in his hands. Donald Trump straightened his jacket as he addressed the group of kids who had bullied Joey. His voice was calm but carried a weight that made every word land with purpose. Do you know what courage really means? Trump asked, scanning their faces. It's not about being the strongest or the loudest. It's about standing up for what you believe in, even when others try to tear you down. That, he said, gesturing toward Joey, is what this young man has shown today. Brian, the ringleader of the group, shifted uncomfortably. We didn't mean to make him cry. We were just joking around. Joking around? Trump repeated, raising an eyebrow. Do you think he was laughing? Brian shook his head, his face turning red. Let me tell you something, Trump continued, his tone softening but still firm. It's easy to follow the crowd. It's easy to pick on someone who seems different or to join in when others are doing it. But the real strength, the kind of strength Joey's grandfather likely taught him, is in standing apart. It's in showing kindness when no one else does. Do you think you could do that? The group of kids exchanged uncertain glances. One of the smaller boys, Tommy, spoke up hesitantly. But, everyone says that hat means bad things. We thought, he trailed off, looking at the ground. Trump crouched down to Tommy's level, his face softening into a gentle smile. Son, sometimes people see things differently, and that's okay. But what's not okay is judging someone without knowing their story. Joey wears this hat because it reminds him of his grandfather, a man who served this country with honor. Does that sound bad to you? Tommy shook his head, his eyes wide. Trump stood again and looked at the group as a whole. Every one of us has something that makes us unique. It could be the way we think, the things we believe, or even the clothes we wear. And those differences, they're what make us special. Imagine if we all looked the same, thought the same, acted the same, what a boring world that would be. The kids nodded slowly, their initial defiance replaced by quiet understanding. Trump turned his attention back to Joey, whose tears had dried. He placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. Joey, your grandfather gave you something important, not just this hat, but a lesson about believing in yourself. Never forget that. And if anyone gives you trouble again, you stand tall and remember that you have the right to be proud of who you are. Joey's grip on the hat tightened as he looked up at Trump. Thank you, Mr. Trump, he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Trump smiled. You're welcome, son. And remember, you're braver than you think. At that moment, one of the teachers finally approached, her face a mixture of astonishment and gratitude. "Mr. Trump," she said, "thank you for stepping in. I think they've learned an important lesson today." Trump nodded. "It's not just about the lesson, it's about making sure they carry it with them. That's the real challenge." He glanced at the group of kids again. "So, here's what I want from you all. The next time you see someone being teased or left out, don't join in. Be the one who stands up and says, 'This isn't right.' Can you do that?" The kids murmured their agreement, their voices subdued but sincere. Brian, still looking sheepish, stepped forward and held out his hand to Joey. "I'm sorry, Joey. I shouldn't have made fun of you. I was wrong." Joey hesitated for a moment before shaking Brian's hand. "Thanks," he said simply. As Trump turned to leave, Joey's small voice called out, "Mr. Trump, wait." He turned back, his expression curious. "Can I take a picture with you? So I can show my grandpa?" Joey asked, his cheeks pink with excitement. Trump chuckled. "Of course, Joey." He knelt beside the boy as one of the teachers snapped the picture. Joey beamed, holding his hat proudly. Have you ever witnessed someone being teased or left out? Did you step in, or did you stay silent? What would you do if it happened again? The playground had transformed. What began as a moment of pain for Joey became a lesson in courage, kindness, and understanding for everyone present. But the impact of this day was far from over. It was just the beginning of a ripple effect that would extend far beyond the schoolyard. The playground felt different the next day. The air was quieter, more thoughtful, as if the echoes of the previous day's lesson still lingered. Joey walked confidently across the field, his red hat perched proudly on his head. For the first time in weeks, he wasn't afraid of being mocked. Instead, he felt something new, a quiet strength, the kind his grandfather always talked about. Brian and the other kids from the group watched him from a distance. Normally, they'd be ready with a snide comment or a shove, but today was different. Brian hesitated before walking over to Joey, his expression unsure but genuine. "Hey, Joey," Brian said, rubbing the back of his neck. About yesterday. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel bad. I guess I just didn't think about how much that hat meant to you." Joey looked up, his brown eyes searching Brian's face. For a moment, he said nothing, then nodded. "It's okay," he said. "Just, don't do it again, okay?" Brian grinned sheepishly. "Deal." Joey smiled back, and for the first time, the two boys began to talk, not as enemies, but as equals. The ripple of change didn't stop there. Word of Donald Trump's visit to the playground had spread far beyond the schoolyard. Parents, teachers, and even local reporters shared the story, which quickly made its way to the news. "Trump teaches playground lesson on courage and kindness," read one headline. "The day a red hat united instead of divided," said another. The story sparked conversations across the community, and beyond. Social media lit up with debates. Some praised Trump's actions. Finally, a moment where politics didn't matter, just human decency. This is the leadership we need. Others questioned it. Would he have done the same if it wasn't a MAGA hat? What's the real agenda here? But amid the debates, one thing was clear, the story resonated with people from all walks of life. It wasn't just about a hat anymore, it was about understanding, empathy, and the courage to stand up for what matters. At school, Joey's story became a catalyst for change. The teachers decided to use the incident as a teaching moment. During an assembly, they shared the lesson Trump had imparted about courage and kindness. "Everyone here is different," one teacher said. "We come from different families, have different beliefs, and like different things. But those differences are what make us unique. They're what make us special. So instead of tearing each other down, let's celebrate what makes each of us who we are." The students nodded, many glancing at Joey, who sat near the front of the room. His face turned red as he realized the spotlight was on him, but he didn't shrink back. Instead, he sat up straighter, his hat still on his head. At home, Joey showed the picture he'd taken with Donald Trump to his grandfather. The old man's eyes sparkled with pride as he held the photo in his hands. "You know, Joey," his grandfather said, his voice thick with emotion, "I gave you that hat because I wanted you to remember something important. I wanted you to remember that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared, it means you keep going even when you are." Joey nodded, his chest swelling with pride. "I get it now, Grandpa. And I think everyone else gets it too." Over time, Joey noticed the changes around him. The kids who used to tease him now treated him with respect. The playground, once a place of cliques and division, began to feel more welcoming. Even Brian, who had been his biggest tormentor, became a friend. One afternoon, as they played on the swings, Brian looked over at Joey. "You know, that hat's kinda cool," he admitted, grinning. Joey laughed. "Told you so." But the impact of that day wasn't limited to the playground. Joey's story inspired others in the community to reflect on their own actions and beliefs. Parents talked to their kids about kindness and understanding. Teachers included lessons on empathy and inclusion in their classrooms. Even Trump's visit left a lasting impression. It reminded people that sometimes, a single act of stepping in, of showing kindness and standing up for someone, can make a difference that ripples outward. Years later, Joey still kept the red hat, though it had grown worn and faded with time. He didn't wear it every day anymore, but whenever he looked at it, he remembered the lessons he'd learned. It wasn't just a symbol of his grandfather's wisdom, it was a reminder of the courage he'd found within himself and the kindness that had transformed his world. What small act of kindness can you do today that might create a ripple effect? How can you stand up for someone who needs it, just like Joey? Joey's story wasn't just about a boy and his hat. It was about the courage to stand tall, the power of kindness to heal, and the way understanding can bridge even the widest divides. It proved that even the smallest moments can leave a lasting impact, and that the ripples of one good deed can change the world.